Thanks, Trevor Lund. Let's see here. First is Myron. Who was here first? Callie? Is that what you have? Yeah, I have Callie here too. 1,000 Pine Points to Callie. 500 Pine Points to TMA2NC. That's a new name. Congratulations. 500 Pine Points. Save it. Don't spend it in one place. Wayne Mills. I recognize your name. 250 Pine Points to you. By the way, in this video that I'm about to play here, Cameron Bertuzzi admits something amazing, and we'll get to that shortly. Oh, did I just do that? I just did that. That's like a technique that disc jockeys, radio hosts use. Like it's a teaser. It's like something to keep people here. I thought I was above that, but I just found myself doing it. So here's something that I've been toying with in the past, and something that I did on Twitter today. And the question I asked on Twitter was basically, assume you have all four Gospels, and but then you remove the Gospel of John, because that's the latest Gospel written. Would you still believe in the resurrection of Jesus? Would you still be a Christian? Then let's pretend that Gospel of John is gone, and now Luke is gone. Would you still be a Christian? How far do you have to go before you say, no, I'm out, I'm no longer a Christian? All four Gospels? And I think it's a really interesting question, because with the Flying Man, I build it up slowly from the very beginning. I start with the very earliest source, Paul, and I build it up. But maybe it's easier just to go backwards. Now, for some Christians, they're going to say, well, the reason why I believe has nothing to do, well, they wouldn't say nothing to do, but they would say it's not because of the Gospels. It's because in 1993, when I was at summer camp, you would not believe what happened to me, or some other personal experience. But we can throw that in the mix too. Your personal experiences, if you're a Christian, came after all four Gospels were written. So I'm curious if your personal experience, even your top three, if they were gone, you no longer had them, would you still be a Christian? Now, Christians like Lydia McGrew would say that it's really important that one believes because of the reliability of the historical narrative. Because personal experiences are a dime a dozen, especially personal experiences of Christians with low standards. I see and I hear about so many Christians tell me about their personal experiences, and in my opinion, I'm not judging you like that I dislike you, but to me, that's nothing. I mean, you got to start breaking the laws of physics, in my opinion, and in order for you to have an amazing personal experience. Don't give me these coincidences. Don't give me these feelings of back pain. In fact, thank you to the subscribers who went into detail on my last videos with Lee Strobel. And remember, he was talking about Mozambique and these miracle stories. Well, it turns out there was only, I think, 14 people involved in this study. And it was basically self-reporting. So people would come and say, I have poor vision. Oh, really? Okay, let's do a test. How many letters do you see? And they report it. How many fingers do you see? And they report it. And then they pray, and then they report it again and look at the number chart again, or the letter chart again. You know how easily corruptible that is? But try taking pure water and lighting it on fire. That's the standards that I wish Christians would have. A standard of personal experiences that even I think Jesus would say, yeah, Doug, you're right. If Jesus was sitting in my chair right here, he would say, look at the things I did. I mean, lengthening of legs and back pain and oh yeah, my vision's a little bit better and it's self-reporting. No. Those are so easily falsifiable. I mean, we can just explain that in so many easy ways. But walking on water, now that is a personal experience. Or raising the dead. Lazarus stinketh, and then he raiseth. And I think Christians who talk about these personal experiences they agree with this. Deep down, deep in their soul, no, Pentecostal, deep in their belly, they know this is true. They know that their own confidence would go up if they canceled out their personal experiences and replaced it with something like someone that they know has been dead for a year and they come back to life. Now we're talking. But those people aside, which is probably the majority, there's still quite a few Christians who believe, because they actually think that when they're reading the Gospels, that they're reading mostly a historical narrative. One question that often pops in my mind is, I think your own children can figure out what's historical and what's not better than some Christian adults. Like if you ask an 8-year-old, how would you tell the difference between fiction and history? And you give them some examples like fire-breathing dragon. That's fictional, Daddy. How about someone going on a plane to Europe? That could be historical, Daddy or Mommy. What about a man walking on water? That's fictional, Mommy. They can tell right away. And even things like once upon a time. That's probably fictional. How does the book of Mark start again? So I created a poll here, and I'm going to post it. And I have a C results. So if you're an atheist, don't participate, but you can still see the results as it goes on. And let me see if I can put it in here. Yeah, that should work. So there's the poll. I'm going to pin it. By the way, is my audio different today? Because my XSplit crashed and I had to do everything over again. And I'm scared that all my audio settings are not being remembered. But, so this is what the poll will look like, something like this. My guess is my audio is more sharp, which is not a good thing always, because now you're hearing more background noise. So here's your options. Now, for those flag-waving phony Christians who just think this is stupid and you're not willing to participate, just imagine yourself in a red Lamborghini right now. Can you do it? Can you do it? If you can do that, you can imagine answering these questions. So would you believe in the resurrection of Jesus, which is the definition for most people of what a real Christian is, that Jesus was God and rose from the dead? Imagine the Gospel of John. Would you still be a Christian? Or would you leave Christianity? Would you stop believing? How about if John and Luke didn't exist? How far down the list do you have to go before you say, no, I'm out. I don't believe it anymore? According to some Christians who answered on Twitter, which was only, I think, 4 or 5, 3 or 4. Some stopped at Luke and Acts. So John, Luke, and Acts would have to be gone. And if all 3 were gone, they would leave. Some said it doesn't matter. All 4 Gospels, all 5, including Acts, would be gone, and they would still believe. But where is it for you? So vote now. Actually, let me see if refresh. Oh, we already got a vote. Gospel John. Wow, we got one person who says, I'm assuming this is just one person. Show count. That doesn't work. Wow. For the person who answered Gospel of John, stay tuned to what we're about to listen to. Because the Gospel of John is your confidence in the historicity of the Gospel of John should be quite low, in my opinion. By the way, for those Christians who say that the genre of the Gospels is ancient Roman biography and therefore it is historical, here's a simple question that I'd love for you to answer, true or false. There are myths in ancient Roman biographies. True or false? Besides the Gospels, of course. There are myths in ancient Roman biographies. If you say the Gospels are ancient Roman biography in that genre, and you do a little bit of reading, you'll figure out that there's myths in other ancient Roman biographies, things that I don't think you believe actually happened in the past. If the Gospels are in the same genre, wouldn't that just be science that there could be myths in the Gospels? Oh, that hurts. Jank Harmon, thank you for the donation. Appreciate all you do. I do feel bad that Google's going to keep some of this cash. Down with Google, down with Bezos. No gods, no masters. Well, Jake Harmon, I do have a Amazon gift card where nobody takes anything. Not even the IRS. But that's okay. You're allowed to give gifts up to $12,000, is it? Tax-free? Yeah. Other YouTubers are going to catch on to this, that you don't need Patreon, don't need Super Chats. Although I appreciate Super Chats, because what Super Chats give you that Amazon gift card doesn't is recognition for who you are. And I can say, although if you give me an Amazon gift card and you say it's okay for me to say your name, I will say it in the next live stream afterwards, saying so-and-so paid for my appetizer at Outback Steakhouse, and my own Christian wife, when she thanked God for the food, she also thanked so-and-so for providing. Thank you for the donation, Tacit Reticence. Men readily believe that which they wish to be true. Julius Caesar. Yes, and we're going to talk about that. In fact, that's exactly where I have it queued up. How did you know, Tacit Reticence? The whole issue of bias. Like, why does a person like Lydia McGrew do what she does? Because she realizes the importance of saying the Gospels are reliable. Because without the Gospels, well, we'll find out with this poll results later at the end of the show. Without the Gospels and the reliability of the Gospels, you got nothing. I mean, you really don't. Personal experiences or not, you have nothing, because every personal experience that a Christian can say they have, I think most of them will say they have to filter through the lens or compare it to the scriptures in order to figure out whether this personal experience is indeed from God. So anyhow, here we go.
Tim and I, my husband, Tim McGrew, philosopher Tim McGrew, we have jointly been deeply interested in historical and biblical apologetics for, 35 years. I mean, we just had our 35th wedding anniversary. And then that's even reflected in my publication record as early as 2006. Tim and I, that's like 15 years ago now. 15 years. Tim and I jointly published responding to Alvin Plantinga, defending the historical argument for Christianity.
Yeah, Alvin Plantinga, I think, is on record. Don't quote me on this, but I think he's on record saying that the historical evidence isn't good enough. He did not say it in that way, but just the fact that Lydia McGrew is bringing that up tells you that I'm close with my paraphrase.
Then 2009, we published the argument for the resurrection of Jesus, historical argument for Christianity in the Blackwell Companion to Natural Theology. And so, that's going back a while. And then that is just this very natural connection with the Gospels. Because the approach we took to arguing for the resurrection, we were really defending the reliability of the Gospels, and therefore the idea that the accounts of
There it is here. So this is what I wanted to point out.
To arguing for the resurrection, we were really defending the reliability of the Gospels, and therefore the idea that the accounts of the resurrection were from the eyewitnesses and what the eyewitnesses claimed.
So from the very beginning, like, her and her husband Tim have their goal is to show that the Gospels and the New Testament in general are reliable, because they, in their minds, this is extremely important, and I think they're right. But just from my perspective, things like, when were the Gospels written? Who wrote them? The chain of custody, is there contradictions, and so forth. I can imagine a narrative being written days, hours even, after an event, We know exactly who wrote it. Are you listening, Muslims? I'm talking to you. I'm talking to Muslims who make this argument. Because Muslims and atheists sound the same when it comes to Christianity, mostly, at least close. You know, it's written hours after, you know who wrote it, and you know the source, it's dated, you know where it was written. If all that were true for Christianity, which it isn't, but if it were, in my epistemology, you ought not believe it. You ought not to. And here's why. If you think, oh, Doug, you have a terrible epistemology, think about it this way, and you're going to hate this because you're going to agree with it. If your own spouse came home one day and said, whoa, how probable is that someone would donate me $100 Canadian? Thank you so much for the generous donation. How probable is that? Well, you do know $100 Canadian is only like $10 US, right? No, I'm kidding. Actually, the Canadian dollar is strengthening. But yeah, so hang on. I'm going to have my wife pray when we say thanks before we eat. Thank you, Lord. How probable is that? Actually, I'm curious to see if my wife will do it. My wife appreciates the donations on Amazon as well because she's the one who spends it. Now, what was I saying? I have no idea what I was saying. Aaron, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, Christians are going to hate what I'm going to say because they're going to agree with it. Yes, if your own spouse came home one night and said that someone who has died a year ago, they saw on the street corner and talked to, I mean, who do you trust? For most married people, they trust their spouse probably the most out of anybody on the planet. If you wouldn't trust your own spouse with that, and I don't think you would, I think your own spouse has gone nuts. That would be your first inkling. Why in the world would you trust someone from 2,000 years ago? Even if you knew their name and when they wrote it and their sources, where they wrote it, which we don't have for the Gospels. You see what I'm getting at? Now, you can go further and say, well, now we have more people and you yourself can see this person and so forth. But at its face, when one person comes up to you and makes an extraordinary claim like this, even if it's your own spouse who you've known for years and love and trust, you wouldn't believe it. But yet you believe Paul, yet you believe the author of Mark, Matthew, Luke, John. Why? You ought not to. In fact, I would go so far as saying shame on you for doing so. Shame. Okay, this is the part where I was actually amazed Cameron Bertuzzi said this. This is probably for most people going to be the most interesting part of the whole live stream, besides if anybody calls in. And I'll leave this open to call in so people can answer the poll question face-to-face if they wish.
Contributions in this area, biblical apologetics, and just biblical scholarship more generally, is that you're both coming at this from the perspective of an analytic philosophy perspective, if you want to put it in those terms. And I really like that because that's kind of what I'm drawn to just sort of naturally, is like philosophy. And when you're talking about history, this is one of the reasons why history is so kind of esoteric to me. It's like it's a little bit difficult to wrap my head around because a lot of these historians don't write, or they're not as careful thinkers as I'm used to. Whenever
you hear what he just said? When he said these historians, I'm quite sure he's referring to the gospel authors, which I don't view as historians, by the way. But is he right? Is Cameron right here?
Esoteric to me, it's like it's a little bit difficult to wrap my head around because a lot of these historians don't write, or they're not as careful thinkers as I'm used to when I read philosophy books, or someone who's just like an excellent analytic philosopher. I'm accustomed to seeing distinctions and laying things out systematically and making sure that your argument follows from the premises and all of that. And
Cameron's exactly right here. Question for Christians listening, even Muslims. Cameron's talking about philosophy and how philosophers, when they write, they set basically everything up, and they'll talk about people who disagree with them. A good philosopher will say, okay, here's what I'm talking about, and here's people who disagree with me. Here's why I think they're wrong. Here's where they might have a point. Here's my sources. Here's my references. Here's my footnotes. Guess what is not done in the Gospels? All of that stuff. And don't bring up Richard Bauckham to me, please. Oh, he mentions people's names, and therefore those are his footnotes. Come on. The Gospels do not say, okay, my name is so-and-so, and I'm about to write a historical account based on this source where I found here, this person whose name is there, who lives here, and so forth. They don't do that. They don't say, by the way, this was written from this place at this time. They don't do that. They don't say things like, okay, here's what's reported that Jesus said, but by the way, some people don't think that Jesus said this, and here's why. In other words, what Cameron's talking about, laying down the critiques and so forth, none of that is in the Gospels. Now, historians today do that a little bit better. Maybe Cameron's right that even today philosophers do it better than historians. I'm not sure about that. But ask yourself this, if you're a Christian. Is history done better today or 2,000 years ago? The art, the science of the historical method. Is it done better today or 2,000 years ago? If you say 2,000 years ago, you're lying to yourself. Stop it. And yet you believe these amazing claims based on a method that is so far inferior to what we have today. I dare a Christian to call in later and disagree with that. I don't think you can. I think you have to say, this is the only response I think you can give. But that's not how things were done back then, Doug. Well, so what? Don't lower your standards just for Jesus. Keep your standards high. If things weren't done like what Cameron's talking about, if they weren't done like that back then you ought not believe it. Those claims, you should say to yourself, I'm going to take this with a grain of salt because these guys, it sounds more like propaganda to me than actually a historical method. L Johnny 22 says, stop it, zip it up. Is he talking to me? L Johnny, are you talking to me? You talking to me? Okay, so some of the complaints about the reliability of the Gospel of John have to do with how it's different than the other synoptic Gospels. And here's just a flavor of that. One of the big ones is the temple clearing. In the Gospel of John, you know, the story of Jesus going to the temple and throwing the tables over and making a whip and chasing people out. Well, Jesus had a 3-year ministry, and according to the author of the Gospel of John, this happened very early on in his ministry. But according to the synoptic Gospels, the other Gospels, it happened towards the end of his ministry. So what's going on?
Really good to be clear about what you're arguing. So let's bring this back to reality. So in the Gospel of John, at the very beginning of it, you see Jesus's ministry doesn't necessarily start, but the cleansing of the temple happens a whole lot earlier in John than it does in the synoptics. And this is one of the areas where I've heard people like William Lane Craig even argue that this kind of like non-chronological narration was a common sort of convention in these ancient times. And this is based on some of these other authors. And I'm sure that you can talk a whole lot more about this than I can. But I wanted to bring this distinction to a very particular issue and then kind of get your thoughts on it. When it comes to the cleansing of the temple and where it's placed in the synoptics versus where it's placed or where it appears, I'll use that term, where it appears in John, how does this distinction help us in understanding this issue?
By the way, I just want to say for the record, and I do this sometimes too, but I like Cameron was bloviating with that question a little bit. So I decided to create a new thing. I want to see if it works.
How does
here.
this distinction help us
Let me
in
rewind it here.
ancient times? And this is based on some of these other authors, and I'm sure that you can talk a whole lot more about this than I can. But I wanted to bring this distinction to a very particular issue.
Yeah, it works.
And then kind of get your thoughts on it. When it comes to the cleansing of the temple and where it's placed in the synoptics versus where it's placed, or where it appears, I'll use that term, where it appears in John, how does this distinction help us in understanding this issue?
Well, I think it helps us in understanding what scholars are saying. So, for example, you just used that phrase non-chronological narration, and that's got that same ambiguity. Does that mean dyschronological or achronological? And so if someone hears Dr. Craig, for example, say that, that John moved it, or non-chronological narration was known, the person, I think a lot of people hear that, they assume that what the speaker, the scholar, the modern scholar means is a chronological narration. I've actually clarified this with Dr. William Lane Craig, like explicitly. So he and I had like an exchange of, he did
Yeah, I'm not going to play all of this, but the point is Christians are not agreeing. Like Lydia McGrew, I would characterize as fairly evangelical, and same with William Lane Craig. And guys like William Lane Craig will say, no, I think John got it wrong. It looks like the other three sources have this temple clearing late, and John is probably moving it for theological reasons, and his purpose is not to accurately record history when it happened. That's the important thing about history, right? When things happened. And so John's doing it for other reasons, because John is just, he's a dreamer. He apparently wrote the book of Revelation. He's a dreamer. He's a lover. That's a song. And so he's not too concerned about getting things right. He has bigger fish to fry. But for Christians like Lydia McGrew, no, you don't say that. Because then guys like PineCreek, they're going to say, well, how do we know that Jesus did that and said this and actually rose from the dead? How do we know that when it says that Jesus appeared in front of women and the disciples, that actually happened? I mean, there's a slippery slope here, and there's no reason to stop sliding. Right? Can I get an amen from those conservative Christians listening? No, you gotta stick to it. Stick to your guns on this and say it's all reliable.
Objections, and then more positive evidence, a couple more chapters of positive evidence at the end, both what's known as external and internal evidence that I think just really argues very strongly for the historical reliability of John as well.
Good. Let's do. If you can do it quickly, give me some of your summarized responses to some of these objections, and then maybe give us a taste of the positive case that you make.
Yeah. So Jesus sounds so different. So, like I said, I have 3 chapters on that, and I already mentioned one of my responses that some of these are actually myths. So, for example, the claim that there are 7 I am discourses. There are not 7 I am discourses. The claim that it's often hard to tell.
Yeah, I'm going to summarize this for her. So some of the differences between the Gospel of John and other Gospels is Jesus just sounds different. And it really appears like the author of the Gospel of John is writing like he's kind of quoting Jesus. But yet it's obvious that Jesus never said the things he said in John and the other Gospels. And these are tremendously important things. Like when Jesus apparently said, I am the bread of life. I am, before Abraham, I am. All the Trinity stuff, not all, some, no, not some, most of the Trinity narratives that Christians are just confident that God is one being in 3 persons comes out of the Gospel of John. Am I wrong? No, I'm not wrong. Now I know Christians can get it in other Gospels. You can have it. But I think they would admit that the bulk of it comes from the Gospel of John. Now, if it's true that the author of the Gospel of John is a dreamer, He didn't do well in his engineering tests or math tests, and he was more of a language arts guy. He could have made some of this stuff up. And so some of the stuff that, this is what other Christians say, even Michael Licona would say some of this was, he wouldn't say made up, but he would say it was massaged. You got to lower your confidence that the Trinity exists, I think. I think that's only fair. But Christians like Lydia McGrew said, no, you can't do that. This is historical. This is reliable. John is just giving a different perspective. If Jesus claimed to be God incarnate, like saying stuff like, I am, before Abraham existed, I existed. If Jesus actually said that in history, which he could have, I'm not saying he didn't, but here's the conundrum, here's the problem. Mark doesn't record that. Matthew doesn't record that. Luke doesn't record that. And this is a pretty amazing statement and a pretty important one. And this is and I've talked to Lydia and Tim both before in the past, and it always boils down to expectations. They would say, well, they had bigger, and she does in this video, she says the other gospel authors had bigger fish to fry. She says that that wasn't their goal. But think about this for a second. Like, be reasonable. Really? If Jesus actually said this in history, the author of Mark wouldn't say so? You would not expect that to be an important thing to say? Like, to just come out and flatly say, here's a man who claims to be before Abraham? Come on. I mean, anyone who says they don't have that expectation, in my opinion, is desperately clinging on to the idea that the whole New Testament is just God-breathed. Hey, thank you for the donation, Manorite. Oh, I like that name. What is your favorite cheese? I would say Swiss slices. Yeah, I'm gonna, because I know Cameron's minions are watching. I've complimented Cameron. He admitted that he doesn't like really, he finds it too esoteric, the historical method, and it's not as good. I got the impression he's saying it's not as good as the philosophers of today. He made another mistake. He made a mistake here. Cameron made a mistake, a beautiful opportunity, and he blew it with Lydia. Let me see if I can find it.
Right.
Kind of safe to
Yeah.
say. Okay.
Yeah. So why am I not an inerrantist? Well, because there just are places where I'm not satisfied with any of the available harmonizations. And so what a traditional inerrantist will do at that point, if he's not satisfied, is that he'll like hold out. He'll say, I mean, the traditional inerrantist will say, well, I guess there's just something we haven't thought.
Okay, this is what Cameron missed. So Lydia, I think she does this for strategic reasons, but that's the cynic in me. Lydia McGrew says she's not an inerrantist, meaning that she believes that there could be errors in the Bible. Now, there's a lot of Christians who say, no. There's errors. I mean, there's no errors in the Bible because it's God-breathed, it's inspired, and God doesn't make mistakes. So anything that's reported to be true is true. Lydia, I think, under that definition of inerrancy, says, no, there actually could be real mistakes. In other words, the author believed something was true, reported it, and was wrong. I think I'm steel manning Lydia here, and she would say that. But this is what Cameron missed. He missed asking Lydia for specific examples. And I'm trying to rack my brain because I think I have in the past heard Lydia give examples, but now I forget what they are. I think there's a problem with how the same parables told in two Gospels that she might say, or where Jesus was at a certain time or certain chronology of events, but I'm not exactly sure. If someone knows what Lydia is talking about, where she thinks the Bible is in error, you can type it in the live stream chat. But there's a lot of things that if you are the type of Christian who needs, with a capital Needs, needs the Bible to be perfect from beginning to end, and if there's just one fact that's not a fact, your whole Christianity comes crumbling down. There's a potpourri, there's a buffet of things to choose from. One of my favorites is, what time was Jesus crucified? And the Bible actually answers that question. In the book of Mark, I think it says that Jesus started to be crucified at 9 a.m. and was dead by 3, so before noon. And in the Gospel of John, it says that the crucifixion started after noon, like around noon and after. Now, it's not important, right, for Christians when exactly Jesus was crucified. But if you're coming from the perspective as an inerrantist that this is reliable history, then these little details are important, because if one is wrong and one's right, or if they're both wrong, then you can say, well, if we keep going with this, the Gospels are not reliable anymore. There may be 95% reliable. Oh, no, but we got this. Oh, maybe we're down to 90% reliable.
Thought of yet some, what
There's
I
some
call
possible way to harmonize.
but I don't know what it is. I don't know it. We might call it like a hidden variable theory, as it were. A factor, an unknown factor, just something about the situation that we don't know. And so I never was, even when I was an inerrantist, I was never an a priori inerrantist where it was like it has to be inerrant. For like a priori, it was always sort of more of an inductive inerrancy. That term I think people are familiar with, inductive inerrantist. And so because of that, then as I delved into this and I found more, I found various places where I was like, yeah, I just don't, it just doesn't seem to me that those can be harmonized. And I'm like, well, as a historian and as a person who's not a priori committed to inerrancy, probably the most probable conclusion, the conclusion that I ought to draw, is that somebody probably made a minor error here. And sometimes I think I can even see how that would have happened.
Yeah. Now the question is, how many minor errors are in the Gospels according to Lydia, or in the New Testament? And how many of these minor errors would she need to see before she would start saying, the Gospels are not really that reliable? And how many major errors would she need to see? Just one? One major error and she's out of saying that the Gospels are reliable? If she's willing to admit there's minor errors, would she ever be willing to admit there's a major error? And what is Lydia's criteria between major error and minor error? Like, what is an example of what a major error could look like? See, for Lydia, I think she would say that when you're reading the Gospels, and if it sounds and reads as historical, then at face value, you should take it as historical, unless you have good reason to think it's not. I am quite sure Lydia believes, and Tim believes, and I'm very sure of Tim, I'm not sure about Lydia, but they're married, they're one flesh, so they... I was going to say Lydia's last decision was to say I do, but that would be chauvinist. I think they both believe that Matthew 27 is reporting history. Temple curtain cut in two, the people in the graves came out, walked around Jerusalem. It reads as historical. Read it for yourself. If Matthew 27, Christians, read it for yourself. That sure sounds historical. Doesn't sound like the author's putting it within a vision or a parable or anything like that. But yet, be honest with yourself. You stick Matthew 27 and you put it in the Quran. You put it in any other text. you would not for 1 second say this is historical. Your 8-year-old child would tell you, this is fiction, Daddy. This is fiction, Mommy. But you can't see it. Some of you Christians can't see it because there's other reasons to believe, right? These personal experiences.
Like how it could have happened that someone got that wrong. And you'll notice that with the temple cleansing, like one of the points I brought up is that if John was really John, it's really difficult to see how he could have made an error. So it's a relevant consideration.
Yeah, if John was really John, how could John make an error? Like with the temple cleansing, she's saying, well, John was there. He followed Jesus around. How could he make an error and say that the temple cleansing happened in the beginning of Jesus' ministry when it really happened at the end? How could he be off by 3 years? That doesn't make sense. So therefore, there was 2 temple cleansings. This is Lydia's thinking. But the problem is, I don't know, how many New Testament historians think that John, the disciple, actually wrote the Gospel of John? Now, if you're an evangelical conservative Christian, of course you do. Well, maybe there's even some who think Lazarus wrote it, but I don't know. But in Lydia's head, I don't think she gives that a high probability that there wasn't a disciple named John who wrote the Gospel of John. And you can just do a little bit of math to figure that out. She admits in this live stream that the Gospel of John was written post 80. If John was around the same age as Jesus, John would have to be over 80 years old to write the Gospel of John. Christians, be honest with me. What's the probability that anyone, especially someone of a lower class, would live over the age of 80 back then? Please hear me. I'm not saying it's impossible. But just be honest with yourself. Is the probability more than 50% or under than 50% that a fisherman would live over 80 years old 2,000 years ago? You have to say under 50% chance. You have to. You have to. If you don't, I don't know what's wrong with you. And the author of John, whoever it was, doesn't say who he was. Right? The only reason why you think it's John is because Eusebius says that what's his name says that he knew a guy named John, who we're not sure which John that is, wrote the Gospel of John. Average lifespan 150 years ago was 38 years. Yeah, and I know exactly what Christians say to this. Well, Doug, you're taking infinite mortality. No, I'm saying assuming you live to the age of 15, back 2,000 years ago, what's the probability that you would live to the age of 80? Assumed you made it through childbirth and being a toddler. Like you started being really strong as an adult. It's still way below 50%. I think the actual number is under 1% chance. And usually the people who lived over 80 back 2,000 years ago were the high-class elites who basically had their nails done in the cushy confines of a beautiful palace or house. They weren't working outside every day with the plebs, with disease floating around. B. Guzman says 2%. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but still, all you need to say is it's under 50%. And here's another way. It's hilarious how Christians get around this. Well, Doug, maybe John was like 14, 15 years old when he started following the 30-year-old Jesus around. Mm-hmm. Now, isn't this just an ad hoc rationalization? Sure, yeah, John could have been 14, 15 years old, so therefore 15 years younger than Jesus. That puts him at 65, right? When the Gospel of John was written. What's the probability someone reached 65 2,000 years ago? I'm telling you, most of the people listening to me right now would be dead if they lived in the most primitive third world country today. Do you disagree with that? Think of the most primitive place to live on planet Earth today where there's humans, but there's no access to medicines, no vaccines, no penicillin, no hospitals. How many of you listening to me right now would be alive today or would be dead today if you lived in those conditions? I think a lot of you. And a lot of you are way younger than 80 years old. Thus saith the Lord. Let me fast forward here. Did I just call myself Lord?
So I want to make a couple points. So first point is that to me just sounds so honest and not only honest, but also modest, because you're not saying that everything is inerrant, or that like there's definitely a way to harmonize all of these different verses and these potential, conflicts in the Gospels and the different things that are said. So I think it's a very modest approach. It's a very humble approach, very honest approach. But I also want to emphasize the fact that just because you don't think the Bible is completely 100% inerrant doesn't mean that Christianity is false. It's not implied at all. There's nothing in the Bible that
Well, if Jesus Christ rose from the dead, then Christianity is true, right? It's as simple as that. Who cares how reliable the Gospels are?
affirms biblical inerrancy. It's kind of like a doctrine that humans have almost invented, that you've got to like be a biblical inerrantist in order to be a Christian. Like that is not taught in the Bible.
I agree with you. I mean, that's a controversial statement, that what you just said about it not being in the Bible. There are verses, though, that would be brought up, and people have brought those verses to me, and I've said, not clear to me.
Yeah, what is Lydia talking about here? So Cameron just made the claim that, well, nowhere does it say in the Bible, I'm paraphrasing, that the Bible has to be perfect. Well, you can find verses. Doesn't the scriptures say that all scripture is breathed by God, inspired by God? Doesn't it say that God doesn't lie? Now, it does say God deceives once in a while, but only the people whose hearts are already hard. 2 Thessalonians 2. So yeah, I think there are Christians who have a good point when they say, no, you have to be an inerrantist because the Bible makes the claim that Scripture is inspired by God and God doesn't lie. God doesn't make mistakes. So therefore, the Bible doesn't make mistakes. If you think the Bible has to do with God, which most Christians do.
Me that verse is actually affirming that, but
fair.
There are verses that could be read that way.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I just wanted to point out that there's a lot of people that I respect that think there's a whole lot of wiggle room here when it comes to biblical inerrancy and whether or not Christianity is true. I think there's a whole lot of wiggle room here.
Why does Cameron say that? There's a whole lot of wiggle room here. I think Cameron realizes, probably even recently over the last few years, that you can't defend a lot of the stuff in the Bible. So you need that wiggle room. Thank you for the donation, Rob Dev. If they believe in miracles, why are time paradoxes so difficult to rationalize? Could just be a tool by God to increase faith-based believing. Yeah, I actually think time travel. I watched the first episode of the new Loki on Disney Plus. I won't give away any spoilers, but anything to do with time travel, it not only is it paradoxical, I just think it's impossible, because you get into some infinite loops going on here.
Would you agree with that at least?
Yeah. I would certainly agree that there's no tendency to show Christianity to be false. If you're not an inerrantist, I do really strongly urge people to just kind of own their non-inerrancy, though. And it's part of what I'm doing. And it's part of why I get along so well with the old-fashioned inerrantists. They kind of like the fact that I do that.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason you do that, because you're trying to gain credibility. You don't want to lose your fellow Christian believers. You don't want them to write you off. And so you gain street cred, right, Lydia, by admitting this, by putting your cards on the table. See, this is why Christians listen to my channel. Because I tell them, hey, my goal is to lead you to hell. I got Satan in the corner. He's my boss. You're either a Christian or you're under the power of the evil one. Well, that's me. They listen to that. And for some very conservative Christians, they say, yeah, Doug's right. So at least he admits it. But does that make you scared of me now? Does that make you like you don't want to talk to me now? Do you think that because of the powers I have through my boss that you can't keep up? No, of course not. You got the power. You got the Holy Spirit. No problems at all. So I'm going to wrap it up now and open it up to anybody who wants to call in. Oh, let's check the poll results. You can keep voting. I pinned it, but let me see where we're at. I'm very curious. Wow. Okay, let me see if I can bring this up here. Whoa. 21% say if the Gospel of John didn't exist, they would basically wouldn't believe in the resurrection. 12% all Gospels. No, hang on. What was the question? Would you believe in the resurrection if? There we go. 21%, yeah, they would still believe in the resurrection if John didn't exist. And then 4% said John, Luke, and Acts and Matthew didn't exist. And 12% said they would still believe in the resurrection even if all 4 Gospels didn't exist. And 62% of you are atheists or non-Christian. That's interesting. Like, you would think that it would slowly get bigger as you go down. But it looks like it's a bimodal distribution here. It's like you have Christians say, I'm going to believe Jesus rose from the dead no matter what. And other Christians who say, well, no, if John doesn't exist, I'm out. Huh. It's interesting. Okay, so let me bring up the whereby. And see if anybody wants to call in. And if you call in, I prefer you show your face. Because if you don't show your face, I'm tempted to give you less time. Is that fair? Because I need to see into your soul. Oh. Can you hear me? Other perspective? Another perspective?
Hear you.
Okay. Are you a Christian?
Yeah, sorry, dude. No.
Oh, you're not a Christian. Okay.
Sorry, my camera has been disabled, so. Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay.
I hear you fine.
But you're not a Christian or you are a Christian?
No.
Okay.
Wait, hang on a second. We got a repeat coming back at me. Hang on. All right, you there?
Yep, go ahead. So what do you want to say? Make it quick.
You there? Oh, okay, sorry about that. All right. So what I'm seeing is that they're all taking the Bible the wrong way. So the atheists and the believers are all taking the story that has been given to them that has been taught that the Bible says. But I don't think any of them have actually read the Bible, or most of them, I should say. Many of them. Maybe you have, but not many. Either atheists or Christians. Most of them don't read it. They don't know what it says. They just go by what someone else tells them. Would you agree?
Yeah.
So if people would read it, they would see that it's actually not the story that's been taught. And it's the same as Star Wars. It's just a story of dark versus light, good versus evil. There's the character, the sun.
But can you give a specific example that you think what the Bible says and what's taught it's different?
Yeah, so we're told that God is the good guy and that Jesus is him, his son. But if you pay attention, it's God is the darkness, which is Darth Vader, and Jesus is Luke, Lucifer, the son of God. Okay. Lucifer is the light bearer, the light in the darkness.
And
the
you
sun,
say, and
the
you
sun in
s-
the sky.
and you say that God is the bad guy because
Well, I didn't say he's the bad guy necessarily. I
the
said he's
dark
the
guy,
darkness.
right?
The darkness. Now, if you read Genesis 1:2 says, in the beginning, God created, well, it's one, but it says darkness over the waters and the Spirit of God
I think,
on the face of the deep. Okay?
yeah,
That means God, the Spirit of God was darkness.
yeah, you're breaking up a bit. So let me summarize what you're saying. You're basically saying, if Christians would only read the scriptures, they would see that God is the darkness. I'm not sure how Satan fits into this, and but I do think that a lot of Christians do read the Bible. Probably not the majority, but a lot of them do, and they don't come to the conclusion you have come to. But I will say things to them.
If you actually read what it says, it doesn't say the things we were taught at all. See, I used to be a believer. I was for most of my life. I've read the Bible front to back multiple times. I studied it and studied it. I used to wear tzitzis. I tied my own tzitzis. I didn't work on the Shabbat, all this stuff. I was like, I am going to follow God's word. This is what he said. But then one day it just hit me that it was a control tactic because everything had been taught backwards. I had a son, and I saw that if I treated my son as God treated his children, I would be considered evil. Now, get this. I don't believe in that shit anymore, but my son is in a Christian school. He's 6 years old now. He's been going to Christian school for 2 years, since he was 4. And he tells me God is the villain. And I said, exactly. I'm glad you can see it. He can see that God is the villain in the Bible. But for some reason, we've all been told that God is the good guy. But if you see that he's the villain, then it will all make sense to both Christians and atheists all alike. You'll see the story is not
Right.
what they
I hear what you're
told us.
saying, but many Christians can read the Bible and not see God as the villain. And the reason for that, yeah. So,
Parents and the church is that God's the good guy. So they were told this without thinking about it themselves. All anyone has to do is what Jesus taught. So now the New Testament was atheist. That's what everyone needs to know. He was speaking against religion the whole time. He went everything against the Bible. He went everything against their writings. He was doing what you're doing. He was trying to get people to see that they were fucking fools.
Why do you think Jesus quoted the Old Testament frequently?
I do too. I always quote things so that the believers can understand that their books are the ones telling them this. If you only understand what it's saying, it's not telling you
Jesus
he's a good
said
guy.
that according to the scriptures that he didn't come to abolish the law but to fulfill it.
Right. Meaning to make sense of it, to show what it's about. It's about that's why when they said what's the most important one, he didn't say it's don't kill, he said it's to love. Well, they put it in the scriptures that he said love God, but what he's talking about is life. Love life with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's all you got to do, and life will be good. But they say, no, he's God that wants to kill everybody. He's going to come back and punish everybody. Jesus never said anything about punishing anyone. He never said, he was like you
did.
telling people.
Yeah, he did.
No, he didn't. What did he say?
He said, do not fear the one who can destroy the body, but fear the one who can destroy the soul.
Exactly. And who can destroy your soul?
Well, both God or Satan. There's people are
No. See, okay, this is what you're not getting, because I'm hoping as an atheist you can see what I'm saying, but I don't think anybody can. But he's talking about you. Only you can destroy your soul. That's everything that he's talking about is about you finding yourself. If you find yourself,
okay, so you're saying Jesus is the
yourself.
good guy, Yahweh's the bad guy.
Well, and they're not really a good guy or a bad guy. They're but the light and dark side of the force. The force is the life force, which is within all of us. And if you, it doesn't matter what you believe, anyone, we all know there's some sort of life force that's making things live. Our consciousness, there's
okay.
If you're thinking in biological terms,
you're a little too passionate for the stoic me. So
well, check this out. So if you're in biological terms, 'cause I've been listening to your atheist.
Yeah, you talk too much. Oh, I should have used my. Yeah, I should have used that. Okay, I just kicked an atheist. Ugh. I agreed with some of the things he's saying, but yeah. Anyhow. Hey Troy, yeah, you missed the Lydia stuff. Too much Star Wars references for me. Maybe he does believe in Jediism. Now, I didn't pull a Lydia McGrew here. I didn't just boot him to get street cred with Christians. You could see it in my eyes. I was frustrated. So I'm not faking anything here. I'm not saying he's wrong about everything he's saying. It's just just we got it. We got it. Christians don't read the Bible enough. We got it. And they just go by what they're taught. We got it. So Christians, feel free to call in. And I want to talk to taking the cumulative case backwards, like the poll results. Tell me why you would need the Gospel of John in order to still believe, or why you're willing to get rid of it. These questions alone, I think, forces you to think about why you really believe what you believe, if the historical methods even comes into play. Make a video on Yusuf Ponder's review. Asadallah was so butthurt because of your review in the den. I think I already did make a video on that video. I forget what I titled it, but look in the archives. I also made a video on Muslim replies to me in the chat. Man, I got to be honest. If Yusuf, if you hear this, the Muslims in your live stream chats, in your comment section, they are stupid. I mean, you have stupid people in every YouTube channel, but your channel, the percentage, the proportion is high. Woo. Maybe stupid's the wrong word. Just insecure. Yeah. Worse than the Christian channels I frequent. The bloviation alert has already... Yeah, if you come on, I'll just warn you, it's in love. But if you come on and talk too much, I'll do that. Yeah, I think I'm close to 800 videos so far. But a lot of them are short, like 2-minute videos, which are clips from the videos I've done before. So they don't really count. You take those out. I don't know how many I have. Still a lot. Shannon Heron, I guess you don't, huh? Don't what? Just waiting for Christians to come and for Jesus to come back. But while we wait for Jesus to come back, I'm curious, is there any Christians out here who believe because of the reliability of the Gospels? Like, is there any? Or do you guys just believe because of summer camp? Like, does it bother you at all that there's New Testament historians out there who say, man, we really don't know if Jesus said these things? Do you, anything inside you go, or, that's all right, I don't need it? When will you start baptizing atheists in sparkling ice? Well, the caller I just had on was a little too passionate. He needs to be baptized in sparkling ice. Well, maybe the coldness will make him worse. I don't know. Oh, yeah. Perfect Dawa. If you're here, come on in. I want to try out my bloviation thing with you. So the question on the table is, to Christians, if I took the Gospel of John away, if it had never been written, would you still be a Christian? If your answer is yes, I would still be a Christian if the Gospel of John didn't exist. How about if we took away Luke and Acts in addition to the Gospel of John? Would you still be a Christian? Do I ever debate anyone? Well, formally, no. But people call just when people call in and we talk, some people view that as a debate, so that I do often. Hey, Myth Vision is here. Myth Vision podcast is here. 100 Pine Points to Derek from Myth Vision. See what I did there, Myth Vision? You actually, I'm giving you 100 Pine Points because you made me laugh when I was on your show, and you were sincerely upset that you had no Pine Points. Is this the new mean PineCreek? No, I'm not mean. I actually think there's Christians who want to come in here and bloviate on purpose just so they can get the alert. But yeah, I was thinking of the perfect dawa when I made this. You did that one three-way debate. Yeah, I think, yeah, with a Jew and a Christian. One of the best debates on MDD too. Yeah, my opening statement on that one, I think, was pretty good. I think I had the best opening statement of any opening statement on modern day debate. If you guys haven't seen it, watch it. I used the power of the evil one to have the best rhetoric one can imagine. Be stronger. Oh, yeah, I got to fix the volume thing. As some of you came late, my XSplit crashed and I had to reset everything. It's still not perfect. But yeah, it's supposed to be loud. It's supposed to be like, stop the bloviation. How much does philosophical naturalism bias every atheist thought process? Asks Soren's Leap. Oh, I can tell Soren's Leap has 3 credit hours of undergraduate philosophy. Good for you. I think for most atheists, I don't know. For me personally, nothing. I don't have presuppositions against miracles. I beg for miracles every day. And now, Soren's Leap, you need to be timed out because you're 16 years old and you don't know when to stop. If you're 16 years old, then you don't have 3 credit hours of undergraduate. Yeah, so mods, if you see that happen, time them out. If they do it again, then out you go. Have you seen the Speaker's Corner UK channel review of you on the Den? Yes, I did see that. It was very well done. They did another one on me on my conversation with Malcolm X, the Muslim. See, Muslims have this idea in their head that their texts, their holy texts, are more reliable than the Gospels. And in some cases, I can say, yeah, but that bar is really low. But it's still, you don't believe a creator of the universe gave the very words through an angel in a cave to a man who's illiterate just because the text says so. Like, come on, Muslims. You know better than that. Well, maybe you don't. Franklin. I know Franklin. See, Muslims have this idea in their head. And you have to mute yourself, which is, let me screen capture you in here. Can you hear me, Franklin? Yep, I can hear you. So let me.
No camera though.
No what?
No camera.
No, I don't know why you don't have a
see,
camera.
Yeah, well, maybe it's obviously.
It's obvious God doesn't want you to
anyway,
see me.
Yeah, I think the evil one is. I think he did it to me last time too. So.
No, I remember seeing you last time.
Yeah, but it was bad connection.
Okay, so let's get to the point here. Something weird's happening with your sound. So I'm gonna ask a question, and you can answer it. Okay, you ready? Would you still be a Christian if the Gospel of John never existed?
Now you're going backwards, right? So we still got Luke and
Yeah,
Matthew and Mark.
Yep, we still have everything else. The only thing gone from the New Testament is the Gospel of John. Would you still be a Christian?
I think so, yes.
Okay, now the Gospel of Luke's gone. In addition to the Gospel of John is gone. Would you still be a Christian?
I might not be at that point.
Okay, so
I think that might be a difference.
what's in Luke that makes you say that I have to have Luke in order to stay a Christian?
Well, Luke, for me, ties in Acts. So you have somebody who, for the very beginning of Luke, seems genuine in the sense that it starts out almost in a reporter fashion where he, first of all, he's speaking to some real person that existed in the past, Theophilus, I think it is. And so what it seems to me is a glimpse back into the past of realism, as opposed to being so atheism often will say that the Gospels could be contrived, and that's a fair point. But Luke seems to me to be a more genuine historical drop into the past.
Okay, so let me read the first few verses of the Gospel of Luke. And this is what you're talking about. Since many have undertaken to compile an account of things accomplished among us, just as they were handed down to us by those who were from the beginning, were eyewitnesses and servants of the word, it seemed fitting to me, having investigated everything carefully from the beginning, to write out for you in an orderly sequence, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the exact truth about the things you have been taught. You're talking about that, right?
Yes, exactly.
What if, well, I know you hate that, but what if I showed you a text that predates this that has a very similar opening? And on top of it, it has a similar opening, and the stuff that follows it, you don't believe.
Well, yes, a fair point. That's a good argument. Now, I'm just going along with your thought experiment here at this point, because the reason that I am a Christian is the standard accumulative case. It's not just the historical accumulative case, but it's also cultural. When I see the world even in real time, it's the Christian paradigm makes sense to me. Jesus makes sense to me in regards to the human condition. So it's.
Do you think the Quran makes sense to Muslims?
Oh yeah, for sure it does. Now, and even when I was listening to the Muslims, when you were talking with them, there was a lot of things that they said that I would imagine coming out of my mouth as well. So
right.
So it's not lost on me that obviously I could be. Maybe God does exist, and maybe it's maybe I've got the wrong perspective.
But when you said that you need the Gospel of Luke, you could go without the Gospel of John. You would still believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead. But the Gospel of Luke is important to you, and one of the reasons was because of this opening I read, that it seems like this guy's taking history seriously. Does he cite his sources? Does he say, I got this from?
No, not to my knowledge. No.
Like he could have said.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't remember him doing that at all.
He could have said, I got everything I know, or not everything, but a lot of the stuff I know, I got from Paul. And he could have said, this here, what I got here, I got from Peter. This here, I got from James. But he didn't say any of that, did he?
No, but again, to tie Acts back into it, you do see Luke in that, and you do see if you read Luke and then go into Acts, you do get you get a glimpse about the spread of the church, which is a crux of the argument for Christianity. I mean, the point about, Jesus hasn't appeared to me visibly. So when Jesus said, blessed are those who see but don't believe, what I take that to mean is that you're believing based on what the church says. You have to take, and so do you believe it or do you not believe it? And so the way that it seems, what I like about Acts and what I like about Luke is that it grounds the it's a narrative of it seems to me to be a real-time narrative as opposed to looking back and explaining something, because when the atheist says, well, you could be explaining a fiction, you could be looking back into the past. I mean, you talked about this with John, the Gospel of John, the fact that you're doubting whether he would have even existed at that point in time, then that you don't even know which John it was. Maybe it wasn't even a John. Whereas with Acts, you've got a Luke there who's with Paul. And so then he says he's got sources, and well, of course he do it. Luke would have sources. So you see, it's a tangential scenario.
Right. But even in Acts, the author of Acts doesn't say, hey, I'm Luke, and I wrote this at this time from this place. Here's how I know what I know. Even in Acts, you don't see that.
I thought you did see something like that in Acts. Let me see. I thought it's a scenario where.
No.
I don't know. Maybe not.
But another question I was going to ask you is, if we took that same structure, like the first bits that I read from the Gospel of Luke, and everything beneath it is about talking about my ancestor who could fly unaided, I don't think you would say, well, this sounds like it's in real time, and I think, it mentions a lot of people's names and real places, and I do believe in the flying man. I don't think I'd hear you say that. Or would you?
No, and I wouldn't say that. But the truth of the matter is that in regards, and I've seen you do the flying man with others, and I can't say I would ever come to the point through that process where I would believe your ancestor flew, but and so your point isn't lost on me. But I think since you brought it up, my point about the flying man is that I don't think anybody cares that you have a relative that flew. Whereas, so you're answering.
You do realize if you don't believe in my flying ancestor, that you will spend eternity in hell, right? You didn't know that? Oh.
I did not know that. No.
There's so much at stake now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and I know you don't like philosophical stuff, but maybe I'm heading that direction. But for me, I
want to show you something. Hold that thought. Okay, so this is the Gospel of, Acts. This is the first 20 chapters. I got the first 20 chapters all here. And I'm going to hit Control F, and I'm going to type in the word Luke. Hear that beeping? That beeping means, is Luke there? No, it's not there. Okay, let's try So if there's the Christian kids who are listening at home, you can do this easily on your own. Just go to Bible Gateway, put in all the chapters, and if you're trying to answer the question, did Luke say Luke wrote Acts? I'm going to check. No, I did chapters 20 to 40. There's no Luke's name in Acts.
Okay, Doug, but let me ask you this question then. If it did say, I, Luke, would that convince you Jesus rose from the dead?
No, of course not. But for a lot of Christians, like you just gave me a reason of why you needed Luke in order to believe that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. And you mentioned things like this, that Luke, it sounds like Luke is in the book of Acts is saying, I'm there and I saw this and I talked to these people. But either in the Gospel of Luke or in Acts, you don't have that. If you
Yeah,
told
no,
if you told me right now that you saw, like, I'm talking to you, there's Audible, I've seen your face before, I've actually known you for years now, I think more than 1 year at least. If you told me that a man walked on water, I would not believe you for 1 second.
No, but
And I
here's
know
the deal,
you,
though.
and I know you better than you know the author of the Gospel of Luke.
True. Okay, but here's the deal. I think I would know whether or not somebody was genuine in their belief or not, or at least be able to lean one direction or another. So, in other words,
I don't care about genuine
regard-
beliefs. I care about the facts, sir.
okay, but the problem, yeah,
Beliefs are for
okay,
children.
but I understand that, but the problem is that we're left. None of us know everything, so
know.
we're left having to believe some things, and even you do as well. And this is where it comes. I think I mentioned this last time we talked. You're in between two paradigms. I mean, you got to choose only natural, or do you open yourself up to supernatural possibility? And then, depending upon what you choose at that point,
I do.
lead you down a different path.
Yeah, you're well
You
aware.
open well, you say that, but I mean, I don't think that.
Oh, I mean it.
Okay, so here's the deal, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but I would say that when you say you're opening yourself up, I would say a small percentage. So in regards to when you talked about John not living to be 80 years old, the truth of the matter is that I don't think you ever put the caveat on there that unless the Bible's true, which of course, begs the question, I guess, but if the Bible's true and Jesus rose from the dead, would it be an odd thing to have God allow somebody to live longer than maybe others would at that time? I don't see that.
If
being
Islam
the
is
great
true,
point.
if Islam is true and Muhammad's his prophet, would it be an odd thing for him to ride on a beast to the heavens? Of course not. That's just science. You see how silly that sounds?
Well, no, because you're comparing riding on a beast to heaven to somebody living, continuing to live.
I understand, yes, but I'm comparing that to all the things John said, not just, but I really don't think you believe because of any of the gospel stuff. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I think you're right. Now, here's where I would say that I think you're right about a lot of things you say.
Can you say that one more time?
I think
I didn't hear you. You cut out. No, I'm kidding.
Well, this is one of the reasons why I come to your channel, because I do like a lot of the advice you give to Christians is actually, I find it to be very good. The things you say in regards to do make me think that when you say, okay, I didn't become to take Jesus as my savior because I knew the what is that, Habermas's
Minimal facts.
Minimal facts argument. I mean, I was a Christian before I heard that. So I've heard you make points like that before. But here's the way I rationalize that. Everyone does the same thing. Yeah. I don't mean to, I think last time we talked about evolution a little bit, but it's so big a part of the secular paradigm. I hate not to.
You're not going to.
Always goes there.
Hang on, Franklin. Are you seriously going to do that? I know you are, but what am I apologetic? That's what it is, right? See,
no, it is true.
Okay, name a claim.
Yes, I would.
Name a claim that you think I would make where I do something similar like that.
Okay, so let me ask a question, and you see if this applies or fits that what you're asking for. What is more likely, Pachycetus transformed into Shamu, or somebody just wrote down that it did?
Oh, you're talking about evolution.
Yeah.
What is more likely, that evolution happened or someone just wrote it down?
Yeah. Because you said you only believe the facts.
Yeah. No, I would say evolution is more likely than someone just wrote it down.
So you would say that an animal completely changed, like Pakicetus looks like a large wolf badger looking creature based on the drawings. And you're saying that turning into a whale is more likely than somebody writing something down like that?
Well, I don't even know what a Pakicetus it was, but I was just saying your broader point that evolution is true. It's more likely to be true than someone just writing it down and saying it's true. Because that's the main point you're making, right? And here's here's where I think there's differences, and you can disagree with it, but the difference here, the reason why I say what I said is because we have people with different biases accepting evolution via common descent. We have people in countless number of different fields, in different fields of science, who accept evolution via common descent. It's just not certain people of a certain bias, of a certain culture, who agree with this. You can be a Christian, you can be a Muslim scientist, you can be a Hindu scientist. Now, try to find that with religion. I mean, it's difficult for someone who is Jewish or Muslim to say Jesus Christ rose from the dead because of the historical evidence. Why is that?
Well, because their bias is stacked against it,
right.
So they're preloaded that way. So let me respond.
But you see my point though, right? I agree with you
Yes.
that there's biases there, but my point is that same bias is there when it comes to evolution, and yet we see people converge and seeing the same evidence and coming to the same conclusion, even with those biases in place. Now, I see that and I think, wow, that's pretty amazing. We got Hindus and Muslims and Jews and Christians, some of them hate each other, yet they all say, at least some of them, that evolution via common descent is true. They accept it as true. I look at that and I say, maybe I should increase my confidence, since I'm not an expert. I'm not the one actually out there digging. Maybe I should raise my confidence that evolution via common descent is true. Now, on the flip side, I can do that with Christianity, and I don't see different biases coming to the same conclusion. Therefore, as a reasonable person, I should say, maybe I should lower my confidence that Jesus Christ rose from the dead.
Okay, so let me flip it back a little bit on you. How many people, let's just say they go into high school and they take high school biology or college biology and they're taught evolution. How many people believe evolution before the evidence is presented to them?
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, a lot. They have to trust their books. Go. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And how so I don't mean to just get on to, life science or whatever, but the point is that our culture, it just like when you said before, and you've said it a few times, so if I'm spiritually minded or superstitious or however you want to look at it, and I grow up in America, of course I'm going to be a Christian. If I was in India, I'd grow up and be a Hindu. Mm-hmm. And that's a fair point. But to that point, also, if I grow up in Western civilization as we know it today, I'm inclined to believe evolution because they teach it. And the truth is,
hang on a second. Yeah, hang on a second. Well, I just noticed something. Like, for the year or two I've known you, this issue has come up frequently for you, but yet I don't understand why this issue is so huge for you, given that there's so many Christians who accept evolution. Like, if evolution were true, would you leave Christianity?
I would be halfway out the door, probably. Yeah.
And you'd become what?
Yeah, I think
an atheist, a naturalist.
Agnostic, I suppose. I would imagine an agnostic.
Like, why wouldn't you?
Because atheism is a misnomer.
Why wouldn't you become a Christian, like inspiring philosophy?
I don't like the way. Doug, I come to your show. I don't go to his show, right? So it's about the way you process
or the
evidence.
Other Christians, not just him, but why wouldn't you become like those Christians who accept evolution via common descent and just say God used it?
It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to you either.
What part Does it make
Does that
sense
make
to you?
sense? That God would use evolution, because that doesn't match what the Bible says. So if that's the case, right, then it takes a big chunk out of. Now, I did make the claim earlier that it wasn't just the Bible that pushes me toward Christianity, but I will say that the Bible does lock in a logical way. It creates a logical foundation for me to be able to test my worldview. So if I saw the worldview, if I saw evolution and I believed the evidence was strong for it, and I had to accept that, it definitely undermines Christianity, because you have a scenario where you can't take Genesis literally, at least at parts. And then at what point then do you stop taking it? At what point does it become a fairy tale or a large analogy? And at what point does it become the history of Abraham? Did Abraham even exist?
Well, if you
Right?
listen,
I mean,
if you listen to guys like Pete Enns, he would say that the Genesis 1 and 2 account is actually more of a narrative of Israel, and how Israel was in the Garden of Eden, and then they sinned, they rebelled against God, and they were kicked out, and it's a story of redemption. And then other scholars have different takes. So in other words, I'm saying you can be a Christian and still view Genesis 1 and 2 as a fairy tale.
yeah, there are Christians that do that, but I just am telling you that I would have a hard time being honest with myself and saying that I wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
It just seems like
Well,
I would be on your side if I thought the evidence. In other words, I see you and I say you believe evolution makes sense, and so it counters the biblical view. And I say that if I thought like you did, I would be more where you are, and I would say then yeah, the biblical view becomes far less likely.
But let's be honest though. Like I understand the belief or accepting evolution is hard because we humans are not good at thinking in terms of millions and billions of years. We just can't do it. And so that slow, gradual process of change is really tough intuitively to get. But so I can admit that. But can you admit that reading Genesis 1 and 2 kind of sounds like a fairy tale to begin with? Like regardless
Yes.
of evolution. So what makes you think it's actually historical then? So let's assume evolution's false. Why do you think Genesis 1 and 2 is true?
Well, it goes back to a cumulative case scenario. So if there's two things lean on each other, so it's the concept of Christ answering the human condition. And again, it becomes, we don't operate in a vacuum. And so when you say, can I see that Genesis sounds like a fairy tale in certain ways? And I say yes to that, but I also see, and I hate to be the, I know you are, but what am I guy? But I also see that when I see evolution, I see fairy tale as well. So I'm left in an awkward position where I'm left to choose between two fairy tales. So as an example, if you say, well, it's odd for us to think in terms of millions of years. Well, I don't buy the evidence. I don't think I look at that evidence in the same way that you look at the historical argument for Christianity, because it is we're offering two historical arguments here. And so
okay, well,
what I'm saying,
hang on a second. Let's say, let's try this. Let's assume you knew nothing about anything in the Bible except for Genesis 1 and 2. Would you come to the same conclusion that this is history?
yes, or that it appears to be a glimpse back in the past. So in other words, I think it could be another person's view of history. Like I wouldn't, if I didn't lock on to Christianity as fulfilling a number of different tangent points for me in my worldview, then I might question it in terms of was it really, how long was it? And this sort of, did a serpent really talk? This sort of stuff.
Well, let's get into the details of this because I can tell this is important.
Okay.
Do you believe that the earth was formed before the sun or the sun before the earth?
I believe the sun. I believe the earth before the sun.
Okay. Now, scientists say the opposite, right?
Yeah, of
Okay.
course. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I realize that I'm I'm in the far minority here. I think I understand my position.
Let's look at the whole book of Genesis. Do you believe the earth is a globe or a flat plate with a dome over it?
I believe the earth is a dome. I mean, a globe. Sorry.
A globe. Okay.
But I don't. But again, to that point, I'd never seen this myself, so I don't know. I mean, could the Earth be flat? I think the odds are small, but I mean, would it shock me? But I also don't think the Bible necessarily says that either.
But I think the Bible's, I'm a pretty straight shooter, right? I think the Bible is pretty clear that it is a flat dish with a dome over top with the firmament. Like if you and I were going to go in a time machine 4,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, and well, whenever, and we talked to people and asked them the shape of the earth, they would say, I think flat with a dome, like the expanse wrapped around.
See, on that point, I do think there may have. Okay, I'm not going to say that you're wrong on that, but I would be open to thinking people had a different opinion about it, because I think this concept that we were Neanderthalish minded people and thought the earth was flat as part of that paradigm. Now, I'm not saying that would, but and that Columbus or whoever had to set the record straight. I think that narrative is a false narrative to begin with. It sounds like to me Columbus had other motives involved, because I remember hearing that in school. So stuff I was taught in school turned out not to be true. Now, I'm not saying that was curriculum. Maybe it was a teacher. I don't remember. But I remember being told that Columbus proved the world was round.
Well, the point what I was making with,
we didn't know that.
But the point I was making with the globe is the Bible says, it really makes it sound like the earth is a certain way, and you reject it. You say the earth is a globe. But you don't reject that the earth was made before the sun. So I'm just wondering why the Bible says two things, you accept one and reject the other.
Okay, so because I can't, let me see if I can answer this succinctly. I can't pull away enough from the earth to figure out the shape. The reason why I think the earth is round is because I see the sun setting, and the flat earth doesn't make sense to me. When they argue perspective, that doesn't make sense. That in that point.
Okay.
And
If you met an astronomer who said, hey, I saw a star form and I saw planets start to go around it after it formed. I'm not an astronomer. Is that even, does that happen? I think it does. That we can actually see, it takes billions of years, but we see light hit us for the first time, the formation of stars. Would that convince you that maybe stars are formed before planets?
Yeah, if we could see that. But
okay,
you
then
said
what
it
would
yourself.
that do? What would that do though to your view of Genesis? Then would you say Genesis got this wrong? Would you say that?
Possibly, but I mean, I think that I think that the sun exists, the earth exists. I wasn't there. It would be my point. So you're bringing evidence to me which does correlate. So I would then lean that direction. But until I see that evidence, why should I choose one view over another? Now, isn't that up to me to make sense of what criteria?
I'll give you a good reason to choose one or the other. And it's what I said earlier. You can have Jews who believe in God, Hindus who believe in gods, Muslims who believe in God. You can have people, agnostics, atheists, whatever, who have different biases, and they will tell you the same thing. Stars form before planets, and then the planets go around the stars. And Genesis says the opposite. And so they will say to you, if you're going to take it literally, you got to choose one or the other. You can't have it both ways. Choose this day who you will serve, Franklin. Scientists or God?
Well, I
kidding.
choose
I'm
God.
kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You can believe in God and still say Genesis 1 is not literal is the point.
Yes, but you know I believe that it's difficult because I don't want to say that people who believe that are have some sort of problem, but the truth is that I see it the way I see it. So, and I don't think, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I go back to the point where people receive what a paradigm, they received a worldview, and then they get evidence that backs that up. But that evidence is presented in such a way. In other words, there's trajectory right now for everyone, Jew, Muslim, Christian, to believe evolution and around Earth. And I don't even know why we're
So
going around.
what would it take for you to believe evolution then? You have to see it with your own eyes?
Oh, I have to see it. Yeah, I want to see it. Or I want to see somebody who can create it, do something scientifically. I don't want to see drawings in books. I don't want to see somebody talk about so
Okay,
as an example,
hang on a second. That's a great answer, and you answered directly, and I appreciate that. I asked you, what would it take for you to believe in evolution via common descent? You said, I would have to see it with my own eyes or see someone duplicate one species to another. Now, let me ask you the million-dollar question. Did you see Jesus Christ rise from the dead?
No.
You believe that without seeing it with your own eyes?
That's right. But I know what I'm doing. In other words, here's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that I have evidence that you should take because the evidence that I have, you already know about.
No, I'm not. We're not even talking about me. We're talking about you. Why do you have a different standard of evidence for evolution than you do for the resurrection?
It's a comparative analysis between two different paradigms. So let's take the human as an example. What is more likely that humans, like we're on and my camera is supposed to be working, but look at the technology that we have. Look at how creative humans are. We launch rockets into space. We've got medical computers. We got all this stuff. We're creative.
I'm giving you that. I'm granting you that.
Let me finish. But I'm trying to get to the nub of why I believe, and it's a comparative analysis between two paradigms. So you want to know why I keep bringing up evolution. It isn't so much that I think the evidence for Christianity is insurmountable, because again, that goes back to the point of saying, I understand that you know that evidence and it isn't insurmountable to you. You dismiss it. You find holes in it. And I often will agree with that. The point is that when you compare that evidence to the paradigm that I'm also being offered, which is, who are you going to choose? You're going to choose, did Yahweh perform a miracle or did Father Time perform a miracle? I'm being asked to support or choose two miracles. But I chose one, you chose another.
I understand all that, but a God could exist. A God could have created everything. A God could even have tinkered with evolution. But when I asked you your standards for evolution, what would cause you to believe it, you gave really high standard. You've got to see it with your own eyes. One species going to another. But you don't need to see it with your own eyes for the resurrection of Jesus. Right? Now that's a summary of what you said. So that tells, and God exists in both scenarios. I'm giving that to you. God could have raised Jesus from the dead, and God could have used evolution. And I'm just curious why one standard you have is this about the standard for Jesus. It seems lower to me. You're willing to believe in a resurrection, granted that a God exists, because 2,000-year-old texts say so. I think that's what you would say. But with evolution, you don't believe, even though we have this, like so many different biases and fields of study who all converge to the same conclusion, but you need to see it with your own eyes. I don't understand why you have an imbalance like that.
I think that you have the same imbalance, though. I think the difference is that...
Well, let's worry about your imbalance first.
Well,
this is about you, Franklin, not about me.
Well, I'm trying to find out another way that I can answer it, but it goes back to a comparison. In other words, I'm not saying to you that I disagree that I have the imbalance. I'm saying to you that regardless of the choice I make, I'm going to be in an imbalanced position because I don't believe that either paradigm has evidenced enough to where you're not going to be in a situation where your belief is based on what others have told you exists. And that's where we both are. We're stuck between these two worldviews.
Well, I tell you,
and you have to choose one.
If the evidence for the resurrection was as strong as the evidence for evolution, I would accept that Jesus Christ rose from the dead.
I believe you, but I just don't think that. I think you accept evidence as being strong, and I think that it goes back to bias, because what happens is we categorize, and I don't know if this will be called a category error. I don't know the logical fallacies myself, but if you take evidence and you place it in a box and you say, because this is what everybody does, we talk about this, and when it comes to Luke, well, it's not history, it's a religious text about a guy who rose from the dead, which is akin to a guy flying. So you've taken that and put that into a specialized category because of the nature of what is said, and not because of the fact that it's a historical document. Whether what it says is true or not is another question. But in other words,
I hear what you're saying. Let's wrap this up and come to a point of agreement. I actually agree with you that if you accept evolution via common descent, it really makes it difficult to believe Christianity is true. Because you can either say it makes God look like a deceiver. Jesus probably thought evolution via common descent. He had no idea what that was. The idea of sin entering the world, you got to really stretch. There's so many reasons. I agree with you. But here's the problem. Evolution via common descent is like highly, highly probable to be true. And so now you're stuck with this problem. Now you have a choice, and I agree with you. It's a bad choice, but you can either become like a Hugh Ross type Christian. Actually, Hugh Ross doesn't believe in common descent, I don't think. But you can become a Christian like from biologos.org and suck it up and try to get your meaning and purpose from God and Jesus, even though, you got a strain. I admit it, it's a strain. Or you can just become agnostic. But I think if you need a friend who's a scientist in this field who you respect. Do you have any friends?
I've got some friends in medical, and I often disagree with them as well. I've got my college biology book. I'd show you, but my camera's.
Fun fact.
Maybe I'll thumb through it again.
When I go on some channels and they ask me why I believe evolution via common descent is true, I say, well, because I read it in a book, which is a great answer for atheists to give. Because they know exactly what it means.
Well, you guys have the advantage, right? I mean, you're not really arguing a point. So you're just like, hey, it's up to you. The burdens of proof is always on the Christians. So,
well, I'll take the burden of proof that Christianity is false. I'm willing to take that burden. But I'm not willing to take the burden that no gods of any sort exist ever. That is so nebulous and fuzzy. But I'll take the burden that Jesus Christ never rose from the dead.
Okay, so on that point, and I know you want to get off, but just for future episode thought, or for what if you're really, if Satan in the corner really, if you really want to earn that money or whatever it is he pays you in, I don't know. And evolution is this big thing with me, then give me if evolution does work against my worldview, as you just admitted, then give me the positive attributes to substantiate that worldview instead of just negatively, in other words, you wanted to falsify the Christian worldview, you'll take that burden. Well, what would help me make your case, or what would help in my mind, would be if you began to give me the evidence, because you say that you that's what you deal in.
Evidence
about evolution. Present some evidence for evolution.
Oh, for evolution. Okay. I would,
Evolution, because that would go a long way.
yeah, I would start, if I were you, I would start with chromosome 2. Have you heard of that?
Are you talking about the ones that's merged together? It's
Yeah.
similar to chimpanzee chromosome.
Yeah. Actually, even
Yeah,
before that, I would ask you to take your kids. You have kids
yeah, got 3.
that you know of? I mean,
Yeah,
take your 3 kids and go to the zoo and spend like half an hour to an hour doing nothing but watching chimpanzees, bonobos, and apes.
bonobos. Yeah, I'm surprised. I mean, bonobos look more like humans to me. But
Uh-huh.
can I give you my argument against that?
Sure. Quickly.
It, okay, I live in a city where they have these statues that are made from the marble that I forget who did the statue of David. If you analyzed the material, nobody would say that statue evolved from the other statue. So, in other words, the worldview is that a creator is involved in the design. If I see similarities between creations, it's akin to me going, if I'm an expert at a certain artist or a certain music group, if I hear or see something new, I know who that is just by listening or seeing, because I've experienced that
Right.
style
But
before.
you're saying something that I'm not saying. I'm basically saying that I'll give you the creator if you want it, but I'm saying the creator used evolution. Now, I agree that it doesn't fit well with Christianity, but there still could be a God and Christianity false, yes?
Yes.
Okay, so let's assume that's the case. Let's assume a God exists and is all powerful, and Christianity is false, Islam is false, basically all the religions of the world's false. If this gives you help to believe in evolution, take it. Like, why not? And just this God used evolution, and then sometimes evolution needed to be tinkered with, and yeah, it still doesn't change the fact that we can look at the DNA sequences of the species and just map out this tree and see where species divert. Like the genetic evidence, I was a chemist, not a biologist, but the genetic evidence is just overwhelming. But the thing is, it's the hardest for people to understand. So that's why I said go to the zoo. But anyhow,
Yeah, but
Franklin, it's
maybe I need to become a chemist.
no, just um, just
Hey, I'm fine where I am, Doug.
well, if you're fine where you are, that's great. But you do you have any cognitive dissonance about this stuff? Because you admitted that Genesis 1 and 2 does sound like a fairy tale, and you kind of feel like you're forced to choose between two fairy tales. So that tells me there's maybe part of you is
Well, I'm
not
surprised.
fine.
I'm surprised you have no, cognitive dissonance in this point either. I mean, are you certain about your side?
I think I'm 98% confident that there's no God. I I'm higher than that all religions of the world are false, the ones that I'm aware of. But I'm totally
Can
open.
I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. If so, I'm not making a judgment about you politically, but I don't think you're on the left.
No.
And I've had, and the reason why I'm asking this, I've got 2 people in my circle of friends who I would classify as either atheists or agnostic, who are showing interest in Christianity mainly because of I would say, to put it succinctly, they are culturally conservative. And so the question that I have for you is, in the culture, if you find yourself, let's say, as far as atheism is concerned,
Hmm.
and you're in the atheist side of things, and you look to your left, and there's a communist sympathizer who wants to take your money, and because you shouldn't have that much, and then there's somebody else to the right who doesn't know whether they have an innie or an outie, and they're confused about their gender, and you go, "This is my crew." That there's none of that in you that says, well, maybe the Christians aren't quite as bad as
Oh no,
I
yeah.
thought.
You see, this is the amazing thing. Christians are not wrong about everything they say. The Bible's not wrong about everything they say. The Bible basically are people who are looking at humanity and trying to make sense of it. You know the verse that talks about women submit to your husbands and men love your wives? Now, most atheists hear that and they throw up, right? When I hear that, I basically am seeing an author 2,000 years ago notice something brilliant about the difference between female and male species. And I think the author was correct. Now, I think the practical outcomings of it can be very dangerous, but when it comes to roles and tying it to a god and deity and all that sort of thing. But basically, human behavior is men. I think if you were to pull the distribution curve of men, they'd rather be respected than loved. But if you look at the distribution between women and ask the same question, would you rather be loved or respected? I think most women would say, I'd rather be loved. I'd rather be protected and secure and have someone care for me, like deeply care for me and share these experiences. Whereas man, I think a lot of men would say, and probably the majority of men would say, you know what? Love is for kids. I just want respect. Well, not just, you can have both, of course. And so I think the author, Paul, did Paul say that? Yeah.
Yeah, it was Paul. I forget what book though.
And he probably didn't get it on his own. He was just making an observation of human behavior. And so.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Now
that doesn't substantiate the Bible's divinity claims. I get that part too.
Yeah. And so, yeah. And a lot of that, I think there's other examples of that in the Bible where these are just authors trying to make sense of the world around them. And some of them made great observations.
Yeah, that's fine. I just, that being said, I just have a hard time thinking people would then believe something that seems unreasonable if there wasn't evidence for it. That's
well, I think we're agreeing.
The way I would
I think it's unreasonable to actively believe something when the evidence is not sufficient. I agree with you.
Right. And that's why we're left where we're left. But like I said, if you have somebody like Paul, who, at least in that respect, seemed to maybe see something, as you said, brilliant, then, you know, and it's fine. Humans have all sorts of issues. So maybe that is. But I mean, that's my take on it. If Paul's brilliant, then what was the whole road to Damascus moment scenario? Was that some delusional situation?
Franklin, you do know that there are lawyers and doctors who are Scientologists, yes? There's lawyers and doctors who are Mormons. You can be brilliant in one area of your life and a total dunce in others, and that's probably the gospel authors.
Well, and just real quickly, and as you kind of threw an olive branch to say that the Bible isn't all ridiculous in your mind, I would say that point is rather good. In fact, I would offer that sometimes brilliance comes at a cost. And I mean, if you look at our school system, it's filled with some nonsense, and some brilliant people push it. So, yeah, to your point, I agree.
Yeah, and I agree with that too. I'm against critical race theory. I think it's a horrible theory. I think it has very terrible practical outcomes and pits people against each other, and to teach kids when they're like 8 years old that if you're white, you're part of the problem. I mean, it's sick.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir on that one.
Yeah. Anyhow, thanks for coming on, Franklin.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. I wish my camera would have worked.
Yeah, me too. But everything happens for a reason, right?
Well, that's what they say.
I got someone else who wants to come in.
All right. See you, Doug.
Take care. I got to always mute myself first. I'm not myself, the person. Can you hear me, new theist? Hello? I can see you sort of.
How are you?
Is this Sebastian?
Yes. Oh, Juli. Like,
Your
okay,
audio and your video is
I just
horrible.
want to
So
say that. Oh, but you can hear what I'm saying. You can understand me.
yeah, go ahead.
I am a theist now because
Congratulations.
I had I had an experience yesterday night. Yes,
Do you want to tell me
I
about
had
it?
an experience. Of course, I wanted to tell you. Oh, here I am.
Okay, hang on.
Look.
Hang on a second. I want you
Okay.
to get in the best lighting possible so I can see your eyes. Can you do that? Can you make the light more light in there? Were you an atheist before yesterday?
Yes, but it was a dream. God talked to me in a dream actually, and he told me all the secrets of the world, and he told me he is the standard for morality. He told me that demons exist. Actually, demons exist. Christianity is false. Islam is false. All the religions are false, but demons exist. And you want to know who is God?
Sure. Who's God?
This doll here is God. He told me.
Put it closer. Is
But,
that Super Dave Osborne from Canada? Hold it up. Let me see. Oh, you can't hear me, can you? Oh, there you go.
Here.
Oh, well, that's a great God to have. He has a super cape and everything.
But my experience was real, and he told me, all the Jesus was a real man, and he actually lived in 2,000 years ago, and he did not rise from the dead. But the evidence for his resurrection actually comes from demons. Demons did that.
So the God you showed me there, he told you this through revelation that Christianity is false, but Jesus did rise from the dead because of demons, or did he just write about it? Demons just made people write about it, and he didn't rise from the dead.
No, demons make people believe that.
Oh, okay.
Demons play with people.
Man,
And actually,
now I'm confused. I don't know what to believe now. Like,
yes, now you have to believe me because he told me to talk with you. So actually, a lot of people can become saved because there's an actual hell where people will go if you don't accept him in your heart.
oh man, there's a lot at stake too. Well, if you had a vision,
Yes,
if you had
yes.
a dream, then it must be good evidence. So,
Of course, this
Thank-
is really good evidence. And Christians want to question me, my evidence, but they are not God. They are not God to judge the evidence He gave to me. He gave to me.
yeah. Well, I know there's people, a lot of Muslims become Christians because of dreams, but you're saying those dreams are faulty, but your dream was real, right?
Yes, those dreams are from demons.
From demons, but yours is from God.
Of course. Yes.
Okay. Well,
And
thanks.
you are not God to judge that.
Yeah. Well, that's very enlightening. Thank you, new theist, for.
And just something more. He is the father of the flyman. The flyman is the son. He is the father. The flyman is the son. And he gave to me the Holy Spirit.
So it is a Trinity. Well, thanks, Sebastian. Take care. Yeah. He had me going there for a second, like just a second. New theist argument. Look at my doll. What was the action figure? I don't know, but it kind of looked like Super Dave Osborne. Remember that show? If you're over 40, you might remember that show. Give him some pine points. He made you laugh. Yeah, you're right, Kieran. 650 pine points to Sebastian for making me laugh. Yes, there's a good idea. That's how trolling's done nicely. Actually, he wasn't trolling. He was telling the truth. You got a real dream, right? It's not late where I'm from, Matt Metro. Yes, Super Dave is now deceased, but he was a great comic. Babis Babinos, I am coming for you. Oh, what? That was a good conversation with Franklin. I think we accomplished some things. I didn't feel tempted to use my I didn't have to use that with Franklin. It came close a few times. Oh yeah, I loved him on Curb. My apologies to Lydia McGrew. She was scheduled to come on and talk about the reliability of the Gospels, but we ran out of time.